Why did everyone act like she wasn't even there? That was the first thing Captain Nora Reyes asked herself every morning at Walter Reed. At 06:30 hours, the corridors already hummed with the rhythm of the waking bass, boots echoing on tile, metal carts rolling past, the smell of antiseptic layered over coffee and exhaustion. She moved between beds with quiet precision, checking vitals, changing dressings, adjusting monitors. Her touch was steady, her voice calm. But nobody noticed her. They never did. Just the medic, the day shift, would whisper, "She keeps the night alive." 2 years she'd worked here, invisible in plain sight. 2 years of saving lives no one remembered. The others liked noise, she liked silence. Because silence didn't ask questions. But today was different. Today silence would break. Lieutenant Morrison came in just after sunrise, coffee in one hand, arrogance in the other. Fresh from West Point, with the kind of swagger that thought experience could be substituted by confidence. He greeted the nurses, charm on display, then stopped at Nora's station. "Captain Reyes," he said, loud enough for half the ward to hear. "Did you actually pass advanced trauma training, or did they just need to fill a quota?" The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was sharp. Two doctors, one physician's assistant, all smiling behind their masks. Nora didn't flinch, she just kept writing her patient notes. "Certified, sir, twice," she said softly without looking up. Morrison smirked. "Certified, I've seen your work, textbook, you'd freeze up in real combat." He leaned closer. "Good thing you're safe here doing bedpan duty." She looked at him once, calm and cold. "Sir, these hands have done more than hold bedpans." That should have ended it, but he wasn't done. He reached across her desk and picked up the small black notebook she always carried, its leather cover worn, edges faded. "What's this, a diary?" he teased. "Dear diary, today I changed another bandage." The ward chuckled again. Nora's hand tightened on her pen, but she didn't move. She'd heard worse, in places he couldn't imagine. Morrison flipped the notebook open, flipping through its pages. Coordinates. What are you mapping supply closets?" He laughed, but slowly the laughter faded. His brow furrowed, his voice dropped. "These aren't diary entries. What the hell is this?" Before she could answer, everything changed. The sound came first, a deep, synchronized rumble that made the windows tremble. Not civilian traffic, not hospital supply trucks, military convoy. The kind of sound that carried purpose. 3 black Chevrolet Tahoes pulled up to the main entrance. Government plates gleamed under the morning light. Doors opened with precision. 6 soldiers in dress blues stepped out first, majors, colonels, sergeants. The clinking of metals filled the air like glass wind chimes, and then the rear door opened. General Patricia Wade stepped out. 3 silver stars on her shoulders, 60 years old, every inch of her radiated command, the kind of presence that made corridors part like tides. Every nurse, every orderly, every officer froze. Morrison almost dropped his coffee. The general didn't stop to greet anyone. Her eyes were locked on one person, Captain Nora Reyes. She walked straight to her, boots echoing against the tile. Then she stopped 3 feet away, back straight, chin lifted, and saluted. "Captain Reyes," her voice thundered through the ward, "it is an honor." The entire room went silent. You could hear a monitor beep 2 halls away. Morrison's mug slipped from his hand, shattered on the floor. No one moved to clean it. General Wade turned to the watching staff. "For those who don't know," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade, "this is Captain Nora Elena Reyes, call sign Echo 7. Syria 2019. Operation Dark Star." Morrison's face went white. "When her unit was ambushed 40 kilometers behind enemy lines," the general continued, "Captain Reyes held position for 6 hours, alone, while evacuating 12 wounded operators. She refused extraction until the last man was safe." Wade's eyes swept the room. She performed 17 field surgeries under fire. 3 of those men were given last rites before she touched them. All 3 walked out alive. A heavy pause filled the space, one that felt sacred. Captain Reyes, the general said, has more combat trauma hours than every physician in this building combined. Her gaze turned to Morrison, sharp, unyielding. And you questioned her credentials, Lieutenant. The lieutenant stood frozen, the black notebook still in his hands. Wade extended her palm. That notebook, she said, contains classified operational logs from 17 missions across 4 countries. Captain Reyes operates under deep-cover medical protocols. This is her first stateside posting in 3 years. She took the notebook from Morrison's shaking fingers, handed it back to Nora with respect. She's not just a medic, Lieutenant. She's one of 6 personnel in the entire U.S. military cleared for Echo Protocol. When Special Operations needs medical support for black site missions, they call her. Nora stood still, professional as ever. The only movement was her hand taking back the notebook, sliding it into her coat pocket like it was nothing more than paperwork. But the room wasn't breathing. Not one person. General Wade reached into her uniform pocket, pulling out a Silver Star medal. For actions during Operation Dark Star, delayed 4 years due to classification restrictions, it's my honor to present this to you personally. She pinned it on Nora's uniform. The silence broke into applause, not the usual polite kind, the kind that comes from awe, the kind that rises from the gut. Nurses, doctors, even patients who could stand joined in. Morrison and his friends didn't move at first. Then slowly they did, clapping with trembling hands. General Wade smiled faintly. "Carry on, Captain." "Yes, ma'am." And just like that, she turned and left, leaving behind a room that would never see Nora raised the same way again. That night, long after the ward quieted, Nora sat alone in the break room. The medal lay on the table beside her coffee. She hadn't put it away yet. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. Outside, the city lights flickered through the window like fading campfires. Her fingers brushed the edge of her notebook. She opened it not to the classified coordinates or tactical notes, but to a small folded page near the middle. Faded ink, sand still embedded in the creases. Her handwriting read, Echo 7, Dark Star, 0413, objective complete, 11 breathing, 1 lost. He asked for his sister before the light went out. She stared at those words until they blurred. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled. She closed the notebook slowly, the sound of rain starting to patter against the window. A soft knock came from the doorway. "Captain Reyes." It was Dr. Sandoval, older, kind eyes, the kind of man who didn't ask questions unless they mattered. "Didn't mean to disturb you," he said. "Just wanted to say it's good they finally see you." Nora gave a faint smile. "Visibility isn't always a gift, Doctor." He stepped closer, curious. "You really were there, weren't you? Operation Dark Star. Some of us thought it was just rumor." She didn't answer. He nodded, understanding her silence. "Still, thank you for what you did and for what you still do." After he left, she sat there a while longer, listening to the rain. Her fingers brushed the metal again, then the notebook. And for the first time in years, she whispered aloud, "I didn't forget you." No one heard her. But the wind outside shifted, soft, almost like a reply. 3 months later, Morrison transferred out, reassigned to logistics training, far from Walter Reed. On his last day, he saw her at the base coffee shop, sitting by the window, tablet in hand. He approached hesitantly, "Captain Reyes." She looked up. Her gaze was calm, unreadable. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "For what I said before, there's no excuse." She studied him for a long moment, then said, "The uniform doesn't make you a soldier, Lieutenant. The work does." He nodded, humbled. She added, softer this time, "Respect isn't about rank, it's about seeing the person wearing it." He left, changed in ways no lecture could have managed. Nora returned to her coffee, scrolling through her notes, but then she paused. On the last page of her notebook, new ink glimmered faintly under the light. She hadn't written it. It said, "You saved 11, you forgot one." Her breath caught. The world outside seemed to go still. For a long moment she just stared at those words. Then she closed the notebook and whispered, barely audible, "No, I didn't forget." But the tremor in her hand said otherwise. Outside, thunder rolled again, soft, distant warning. Why did the general call her Echo 7? That question followed Nora everywhere after that morning. It lingered in the halls, whispered behind coffee cups, murmured in the quiet corners of Walter Reed where gossip traveled faster than orders. Some said it was a code name. Others said it was a ghost unit, the kind of team the military pretended didn't exist. But Nora said nothing. She just kept working, steady hands, calm tone, and that silent precision that unnerved even the most arrogant officers. She'd never liked attention, not in Syria, not now. The metal still felt heavy on her chest, though she kept it tucked away most days. The applause from that morning had faded, replaced by the soft beeping of heart monitors and the low hum of machines. Life went on. It always did. But something inside her had shifted, not pride, not relief, something quieter, a memory stirring. Every time she reached into her coat pocket and felt the edges of that black leather notebook, she remembered the smell of burning sand, the screams, the heat. The name, Echo 7, wasn't just a call sign. It was a weight she carried and a promise she'd made. That night, long after the corridors emptied and the fluorescent lights dimmed to that ghostly blue, Nora sat alone in the staff lounge. Rain tapped against the window. Washington nights had a way of pretending they were peaceful. Her hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee gone cold. Across the table, the silver star caught the faint light, glinting once like a heartbeat. She opened her notebook. The pages were full of numbers, locations, and quick notes written in shorthand only a few people on Earth could read. But one page was different. The corner was folded, the ink darker, smudged by sand, maybe tears. It read, Echo 7, Dark Star, 0413, Objective complete, 11 breathing, 1 lost. He asked for his sister before the light went out. She stared at that last line until it blurred. The rain outside grew harder. That voice came back, faint, broken, over the radio all those years ago. Echo 7, we're pinned, can't move, they're coming from the North Ridge, we need. Static, then silence. Her hands trembled, not from fear but memory. Someone knocked. Captain Ray's. It was Dr. Sandoval, one of the senior physicians. Older, soft-spoken, the kind who'd seen enough loss to stop pretending he could forget it. Didn't mean to intrude, he said, stepping in. You've been here all night. I couldn't sleep, she said simply. He nodded. They said the general came for you personally. That true? Nora didn't answer. She just closed the notebook. Sandoval hesitated. You know, when I was stationed in Kandahar, we used to hear about medics who worked the black zones. No uniforms, no insignia, no extraction protocols. Just call signs and silence. Some of us thought those were myths. They weren't, she said quietly. For a moment neither spoke. The rain filled the silence. You saved lives here, Captain. That's enough. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, she whispered. Sandoval tilted his head. You lost someone, didn't you? Nora looked down. We all did. He gave a small, understanding nod, then left her to the storm. 3 weeks later, Nora received a sealed envelope with no sender's name, just an official Department of Defense seal and a single word stamped in red. Restricted. Inside, a short message typed on plain paper. Echo 7, your presence is requested at Fort Belvoir. 900 hours. No uniform, bring notebook. Her breath caught. She hadn't seen that signature code since Syria. By dawn, she was driving south, the highway empty, morning mist rising like smoke from the asphalt. She kept her hair tied back, uniform replaced by plain fatigues. The world outside blurred into gray, her reflection ghosting across the window. She remembered driving through deserts once, but then it was convoys, dust storms, gunfire echoing off steel. Here, the only sound was the hum of tires and the faint echo of her own heartbeat. When she arrived, the guard at the gate didn't ask for ID. He just looked once, nodded, and said, "Welcome back, ma'am." Inside, Fort Belvoir looked quiet, too quiet. Not a regular base morning. No drills, no shouting sergeants, just stillness. Controlled stillness. A young officer guided her through the corridors of the old intelligence wing. They stopped at a door marked Operations Restricted Access. He entered a code, then stepped aside. "Ma'am, they're waiting for you." Inside, the air felt colder. 3 people sat around a long table. General Wade, a man in civilian clothes with NSA credentials, and a special operations colonel she didn't recognize. "Captain Reyes," General Wade greeted, "or do you still prefer Echo 7? Nora stood tall. "Captain's fine, ma'am." "Good, because we're not sending Echo 7 anywhere. Not yet." The general slid a file across the table. "This came through 3 days ago. Satellite imagery from northern Syria. Village near the old Dark Star AO. Look familiar?" Nora glanced down. Her chest tightened. The landscape was the same, the dry riverbed, the ridge, the collapsed structures. But something was different. A building stood where there shouldn't have been one. "What am I looking at?" she asked. The NSA agent spoke softly. "Intel suggests the site has been reactivated, not by us. Locals say foreign contractors have moved in. Same pattern of signals as 2019. Echo frequencies." He nodded. General Wade's voice dropped. "You left something behind there, something that shouldn't exist anymore." Nora's pulse quickened. The field logs were wiped. The med-evac confirmed destruction. "They were," the colonel said, "but someone's rebuilt the comms array. They're using your old Echo line and your medical signature. Someone out there is using your identity." The words hit like a punch. For a long time she didn't speak. "Ma'am," she said finally, "what do you need from me?" "Nothing," Wade replied. "Not yet. I just needed you to know. If anyone comes asking questions, anyone, you tell me first." Nora nodded, but her mind was already racing. Someone was reviving Echo 7, someone who knew too much. That night, she couldn't sleep again. The shadows of her past had found a way to whisper her name. In her apartment, the silence was unbearable. She turned on the small lamp near her desk and opened her notebook again. Her handwriting stared back at her, precise, small, controlled. But the last page had something new. It wasn't her writing. A single line written in ink she didn't own. "You saved 11, you forgot one." Her blood ran cold. She checked the page number 43, the one that had been blank for years. The notebook had never left her sight except when General Wade held it, but Wade wouldn't do this. Someone had accessed it. Her mind flashed back to the ward, to Morrison holding it, flipping pages. He couldn't have known the code, but someone could have copied it, scanned it, while she was distracted. The air felt thick. She grabbed her phone, dialing Wade's secure line. No answer. Voicemail. "General, this is Reyes. The notebook been compromised. Someone." A click, the call dropped. Static filled her ear. Then, faintly, the same word from the desert, carried through a frequency she hadn't heard in years. "Echo 7. Her breath caught. The line went dead. For a long time she just sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding in her chest. The rain outside had stopped. The world was silent again, but silence had always been the warning before everything broke. She stood, slid the notebook into her bag, and looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't the medic from Walter Reed anymore. It was the soldier from 2019, the one who'd bled, fought, and carried 11 men out of hell. Something in her eyes hardened. Whoever had written that line in her notebook knew too much. And whatever had started again in Syria wasn't finished. She whispered to the empty room, almost like a prayer or maybe a promise. If they're calling Echo 7 again, they'll get her. Who had written those words in her notebook? That question wouldn't leave her mind. Every time Nora blinked, she saw it. You saved 11. You forgot one. It felt like an accusation, but from who? From the living or from the dead? The next morning at Walter Reed, she moved through the ward like nothing had happened. The fluorescent lights hummed above, nurses whispered shift reports, the usual rhythm of life and loss. But inside, her pulse was offbeat. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes. When she reached her desk, something else was off. Her tablet had been moved. Barely, maybe an inch, but Nora noticed everything. She powered it on. A new message flashed across the secure internal feed. Sender unknown, subject dark star. We're not finished, page 43. Her throat tightened. Whoever this was, they weren't guessing, they knew. She deleted the message instantly, but the words still lingered on her screen like ghost letters burned into glass. She turned off the tablet, leaned back and stared at the ceiling. There it was again, that creeping sense she hadn't felt since Syria. The sense of being hunted, not by gunfire or insurgents, but by information. Someone was pulling strings behind the quiet. Captain. She looked up. Lieutenant Morrison stood at her desk, awkward, hesitant. He was holding 2 coffees. Thought you might want one, he said. Nora hesitated, then took it. Thanks. He cleared his throat. I heard they called you in at Fort Belvoir last week. Her eyes narrowed. You heard. It's a small world, ma'am. I still know a few people in logistics. Then you also know it's classified. He nodded, guilt washing over his face. Right, sorry. He turned to leave but stopped. Ma'am, something weird. There's been a request from Defense Communications. They're asking for your biometric clearance for an old Echo channel. They said it's a system reset. Sounded routine, but I thought you'd want to know. Her stomach dropped. Did you approve it? He shook his head. No, ma'am, I didn't have clearance anyway. She exhaled slowly. Good. That meant the system was still blocked for now, but someone was trying to open Echo frequencies again using her signature. Someone who wasn't supposed to exist. By nightfall, she was back in her apartment, the city lights blinking like distant flares through the rain. Her laptop glowed in the dark as she accessed the encrypted Echo line manually, a system she hadn't touched since 2019. It took 3 passkeys and a voice confirmation. Echo 7, confirm identity. Her voice was steady. Captain Nora Reyes, clearance Delta Echo. Identity confirmed, the AI replied. Then the line opened. Static. Then faint voices, barely traceable chatter from an old mission log, looping fragments of a night she'd tried to forget. We're losing them, Reyes. Hold pressure, keep him breathing. They're coming from the ridge. Then a new voice, deep, calm male, not from 2019, recent. Echo 7, it's time you came home. Her heart froze. The voice was familiar but distorted, filtered through encryption layers. She replayed it 3 times. Then she knew. Major Cullen Briggs. Her old commanding officer in Syria. The man who'd gone MIA after Dark Star. They told her he was dead. She'd written his name on the memorial wall herself. So how was he calling her now? She didn't sleep. Instead, she printed the message, circled the waveform patterns, compared timestamps. They matched the frequencies used by a defunct black site relay near Aleppo, but the encryption key was fresh, weeks old. That meant someone had revived the system recently. By morning, her eyes burned from fatigue. She drove straight to Fort Belvoir without orders. When she reached the gate, the guards hesitated. "Captain Reyes, we don't have you on the visitor list." "You do now," she said, flashing the printed message. "Echo clearance." Inside, she found General Wade already waiting, as if she'd known Nora would come. "Ma'am," Nora said, dropping the papers on the table, "it's Briggs." Wade didn't flinch. She simply looked at the waveform. "So it's true." "You knew." "We had reason to suspect. Signals have been bouncing off abandoned satellites, feeding through a secure relay near northern Syria. We picked up fragments of voice patterns but couldn't confirm identity." "It's his voice," Nora insisted. "He's alive. Or someone wants you to think he is." Nora's jaw tightened. "He was my ma'am, if he's out there." "Then he's either gone rogue or being used," Wade interrupted. "And I'm not letting you near that operation without intel confirmation." Nora leaned forward. "General, with respect, whoever's behind this used my identity. They accessed my notebook, my signature, my frequency. This isn't just a security breach, it's personal. They're coming for me or through me." For a long time, Wade said nothing. The air between them felt like static. Finally, the general stood. "You'll get your answers, Captain, but not as a medic." She turned toward the window, her reflection sharp against the morning light. "If I authorize this, you're going dark again. No records, no support, no recognition. Are you ready for that?" Nora hesitated only a moment. "I never stopped being ready." Wade nodded once. "Then you have 72 hours to prepare. Pack light, leave the metal." Back at Walter Reed, she spent the next 2 days finishing paperwork, quietly saying goodbye to the soldiers under her care. Nobody knew where she was going, and she wasn't allowed to tell them. When Morrison came to her station, she was sealing her medical kit. "You're leaving?" he asked. "Temporary assignment. Another secret mission." She gave him a faint, tired smile, something like that. He wanted to ask more but didn't. Instead, he said softly, "I read the reports about Dark Star. You saved 11 people under fire, but was there a 12th? Nora froze. "What did you say?" "I don't know why I asked that," Morrison said quickly, shaking his head. "It was in some article they mentioned 12 wounded but listed 11 survivors. I just thought." She didn't answer, she couldn't. That missing number had haunted her for years. The one she'd thought she'd buried under the desert sand. The one she'd written off as lost before the Chinook even landed. She saw his face again, young, bleeding, whispering something she couldn't hear over the mortar fire. Maybe that was what the message meant. You saved 11, you forgot one. That night she sat in her apartment one last time. Everything packed, every light off except a single lamp on the table. The notebook lay open, page 43 staring back. For the first time, she wrote beneath the mysterious line, "If you're out there, I'm coming." She closed the notebook. Her hands were steady, her eyes were not. At 300, a military SUV pulled up outside. 2 special operations officers waited inside, faces unreadable. She climbed in without a word. The streets were empty, city lights fading behind them. As they drove, she glanced out the window. Somewhere far beyond that horizon, someone was using her name, someone pretending to be Echo 7. She'd find them. But what she didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that this mission wasn't about saving lives this time. It was about saving the truth. The plane left Andrews Air Force Base before dawn, unmarked, silent. She sat near the back, gear stowed at her feet, fingers tracing the tattoo on her wrist, the same one the general had seen that day in the ward. The sigil of Echo, the mark of a promise. Outside, the stars faded over the Atlantic. Inside, the hum of the engines became a lullaby of memory. She thought of the men she'd saved, of the one she hadn't, of the look in his eyes as the sandstorm swallowed him. And she whispered softly, half to herself, half to the ghost she couldn't forget. I didn't forget you, I just couldn't reach you. The engines roared, the mission had begun. Why did the desert always remember what people tried to forget? Nora asked herself that as the aircraft door opened, hot air hitting her face like a wave from an old nightmare. The landscape below was endless, yellow, silent, merciless. Jordan's border outpost shimmered in the morning haze, small and temporary looking, like even the earth didn't want it there. She stepped onto the tarmac, boots pressing into sand that looked almost identical to where it had all begun 6 years ago. Only now, she was Echo 7 of the old team. She was something else, half medic, half ghost, carrying the weight of 11 men's lives and the shadow of the 12th. A soldier approached, short beard, U.S. patch faded by sun. Captain Reyes, welcome to Forward Site Juno, call me Mason. She nodded, status. Quiet so far. We're running a small recon detail. Satellite data's been rerouting from the Aleppo corridor. No open combat. Yet. He led her through the compound, a scatter of tents, communication vehicles, and armed silence. The hum of generators mixed with the crackle of radios. Men worked without speaking much. That kind of quiet always meant one thing: something was coming. In the command tent, she met the man running the operation, Colonel Javed Rahmani, Allied Command. Calm eyes, sharp voice. Captain Reyes, he greeted. Or Echo 7. Whichever gets results faster, she replied. He allowed himself a faint smile. We've tracked the transmission you flagged. It originated from an area 30 clicks north of your old AO. We believe someone has rebuilt your former field hospital site. Not a coincidence. He handed her a tablet. The images were grainy but clear enough. A compound half buried in sand, same coordinates, same ridge, and a new heat signature. Nora's breath caught. 12 bodies. Rahmani nodded. We think they're operatives, could be mercenaries or ghosts. Her fingers tightened around the tablet, and the signal. Still live. Same echo encryption you used 6 years ago. Someone reactivated it, but the access point matches your biometrics. Only 2 people could have done that. Me, she said softly, or Major Briggs. Rahmani nodded again. If he's alive. That night the desert was unnervingly calm. No wind. Just still air, the kind that pressed on your chest until breathing felt like confession. Nora sat outside her tent, staring at the stars. The same stars she'd looked at during Dark Star when she was younger, angrier, and still believed valor meant healing everyone. Now she knew better. Some wounds never closed, they just changed shape. She opened her notebook, the one that had started all this, and flipped to the page that haunted her, 43. The ink glowed faintly under her red lens light. Her mind replayed the moment from Syria, the 12th casualty, the one she couldn't reach. Private Kellen Drew. 19 years old, farm kid, smiled even with a bullet wound. She tried to reach him through the chaos, but he was too far, pinned under debris. The last words she heard from him were faint through the radio. Don't forget me, Doc. And now, someone was using her code to say she had. Captain. She turned. Mason was standing a few steps away, holding 2 canteens. Figured you'd still be up. She accepted one, couldn't sleep. He sat beside her, careful, like he knew not to intrude too deep into another soldier's thoughts. You ever been back to a place that tried to kill you? He asked. She almost smiled. That's the job, isn't it? He looked down. You really think your co's still out there? I don't know, she admitted. But if he is, then something bigger's going on. The Echo network was meant for medical extraction and classified support. If someone's using it for something else. Mason finished her sentence quietly. Then someone's rewriting the rules. The night swallowed their words. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled, though the sky was clear. It wasn't weather, it was artillery. The next morning came with orders. A three-person recon, Nora, Mason, and a local contact named Farid would cross the border under civilian cover, locate the new compound, and confirm the signal source. No confrontation, just verification. "Keep it clean," Ramani said. "In and out, no heroics." Nora gave a short nod. "I don't do heroics, I do triage." By mid-afternoon, they were driving across open sand in a dust-coated Jeep, the kind that sounded like it could die at any minute. The horizon rippled like liquid glass. Farid navigated silently, one hand on the wheel, one on his sidearm. "You were here before," he said in accented English. "Near here," Nora replied. "They say the land remembers blood," he murmured. She didn't answer. She was too busy watching the coordinates on her wrist display. The closer they got, the more her pulse synced with the desert's heartbeat. At 14:30 hours they stopped. The compound lay ahead, partially buried, rebuilt with scavenged steel and tarps. Two guards by the entrance, black uniforms, no insignia. A flag she didn't recognize fluttered weakly above them, dark blue, a silver emblem shaped like an echo wave. Mason peered through binoculars. No standard markings, mercs. "Maybe," Nora whispered, "or ghosts pretending to be mercs." She activated her scanner. The frequency pinged echo channel live, active transmission. Her heart thudded once. "They're inside, broadcasting right now." Mason looked at her. "What's the move?" "Observation only," she said, voice steady. But her hands tightened on the binoculars. Because through the lens, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, walking between the guards. Even through the sand and distance, she recognized the way he moved, deliberate, controlled. Major Cullen Briggs. Alive. She lowered the binoculars, exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. Mason frowned. "You know him." "He was my co." "And now?" She watched him enter the tent and vanish into shadow. "Now he's the question." They stayed until nightfall, documenting every movement, every pattern. The guards rotated hourly. A vehicle convoy arrived at 2100, unmarked, heavy cargo. Mason took photos. "What's in those crates?" he asked. "Medical shipments," Nora said, scanning the labels through her scope. "But those markings, they're mine, from the Dark Star supply drops." Mason looked at her, startled. "You mean?" "I mean they've been stockpiling Echo medical gear for years. Someone, reusing my old supply routes, and Briggs is leading it." They pulled back before dawn, returning to Juno Base under the rising sun. Ramani met them at the gate. "Report." Nora handed him the data drive. "Confirmed activity, visual ID on Major Briggs." The colonel froze. "Alive?" "Yes, and he's using my Echo credentials to run black site operations under new insignia." Ramani's eyes darkened. "That can't be sanctioned." "It's not," she said, "which means this is off-book." Later, in the quiet of her tent, Nora recorded a classified memo. Echo 7 field entry. Subject, Dark Star reactivation. Briggs confirmed alive. Operations appear unauthorized. Possible hijacking of Echo network for covert biome testing. Recommend immediate containment. Request reinforcements denied pending further intel. She stopped recording, looked up. The walls seemed to close in. The name biome testing had surfaced once before, whispered in the chaos of the original mission. An experimental serum meant to stabilize soldiers under trauma shock, classified as non-lethal. But the 12th casualty, Kellen Drew, had been part of that test group. Now she understood why someone wanted the past buried. Because maybe he hadn't died. At 200, she woke to the sound of a radio crackle. A voice filtered through the static, faint, childlike, almost fragile. "Doc, don't forget me." She froze. Her radio wasn't even on. Outside, the desert wind howled like memory come alive. She stepped out, scanning the perimeter. Nothing, just the endless dunes glowing under a pale moon. Then footsteps behind her. She spun, weapon drawn. It was Mason. "Easy," he said, hands up. "Heard the transmission too, that voice." "Wasn't possible," Nora whispered. "The signal was internal, encrypted. It came from inside our channel." He swallowed. "Then someone's here." They both turned toward the comm tent, lights flickering, equipment crackling. On one of the monitors, a single phrase repeated over and over. Page 43. Nora approached slowly. The cursor blinked, waiting for input. She typed one word. "Who?" The reply came instantly. "The one you left behind." The screen went black. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She backed away, staring at the reflection of her own face on the dark monitor, and for a split second she swore she saw another face behind hers. Young, pale, eyes she hadn't seen since Syria. Kellen Drew. She blinked and the image was gone. Mason stepped forward. "Captain, what the hell was that?" She didn't answer. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from something deeper, the realization that the past wasn't finished with her. Because maybe, just maybe, the one she couldn't save never died at all. What happens when the ghosts you carry start talking back? That question echoed through Nora's mind long after the monitors went dark. The voice, faint, fragile, unmistakable, had sounded exactly like Private Kellen Drew, but that was impossible. She'd seen his body under the rubble. She zipped the bag herself. So how was he speaking through her old echo network? Mason found her at dawn, sitting outside the comm tent, elbows on her knees, eyes on the endless horizon. "You didn't sleep," he said quietly. She didn't look at him. "Did you hear it too?" He nodded. "Every word. You're not imagining it. Doesn't make it real. Doesn't make it fake either." They both stared toward the east, where the sun climbed like slow fire over the sand. For a moment it was almost peaceful, but peace was the desert's biggest lie. By mid-morning they were back in the command tent with Colonel Ramani. The air felt tense, electric. "You're telling me a dead soldier spoke through a restricted line," the colonel said slowly. "We're telling you his voice was transmitted using echo encryption," Nora replied. "That's not an accident. Someone's mimicking the signal, or someone found a way to record data from that day." Ramani frowned. "But the servers were destroyed in the original Dark Star extraction." "Not all of them," Nora said, sliding her tablet forward. "Look, the echo channels stored trauma data from field sensors, heart monitors, helmet cams. If someone recovered those drives, they could replay fragments of comms, even reconstruct partial voices. But this wasn't a recording. It responded to me." Ramani leaned forward. "Responded?" "Yes," Mason said. "When she typed, it answered like it was alive." The colonel's jaw tightened. "Until I see proof, this stays between us. No transmissions, no reports." Nora stared him down. "With respect, Colonel, the proof is already in our systems." He exhaled. "Then burn it, wipe every trace." That's when Nora realized something. He was scared, not skeptical, scared. Which meant he knew more than he was saying. That night Mason slipped into her tent quietly. "They're locking the comms down," he whispered. "Ramani's got text deleting everything." "Then we're leaving," Nora said. "Where?" "Back to the compound. If Briggs is alive, he's the only one who can tell us what the hell going on." He hesitated. "If he's behind this, he won't talk." "Then I'll make him." She zipped her pack, just her field kit, pistol, notebook, and satellite drive. Mason followed without another word. They stole one of the recon jeeps, headlights off, driving under moonlight. The dunes stretched endlessly, ghost-like. The air tasted like dust and memory. Halfway there, the radio flickered, static, then a faint transmission. "Echo 7, you shouldn't have come back." Nora's hand froze on the gearshift. "Briggs." Silence, then another voice, softer, younger. You left me, Doc. Her pulse spiked. Who is this? She demanded. You know. Static swallowed the rest. Mason looked over, face pale. That's the same voice. She nodded slowly, and it knows me. By 300, they reached the outer ridge overlooking the compound. The lights below glowed dimly, too few for a base that size. Half the place is dark, Mason whispered. Power cut, Nora said. They're hiding something. They advanced on foot, silent, weaving through shadows. The air smelled of oil and heat. Nora's instincts kicked in, every sense sharpened. No chatter, no patrol routes. It was too quiet. Inside the outer gate, she saw it. Medical crates, neatly stacked, marked with Echo insignia. She knelt, tracing her fingers over the faded stencils. These were mine, she whispered. Syria drops. Even the serial numbers match. Meaning someone recovered your supplies. Meaning someone's been using them. They moved deeper, past tents, past generators, until they reached the central structure, the rebuilt med unit. Its door was open. Nora raised her weapon, stepped inside, and froze. The room smelled like disinfectant and death. On the wall, illuminated by a single hanging bulb, were photos, her team from Dark Star. Every member. Each photo had a red line drawn through the faces of the dead. All except two. Hers and Briggs. In the corner stood a figure, back turned, hands on a terminal. Step away from the console, Nora ordered. The man didn't move. She approached slowly. Major Briggs. He turned. The light caught his face, older, scarred, eyes sunken with years of hiding, but alive. Captain Reyes, he said softly, you shouldn't be here. Her throat tightened. Neither should you. He gave a faint smile, tired and bitter. I told them you'd come eventually. You always finish what you start. Mason aimed his rifle. Tell her what's going on, sir. Briggs raised a hand. You think this is my doing? I tried to bury it. Bury what? Nora demanded. Briggs looked at her, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Not the fear of death, the fear of truth. They were experimenting, he said. Not on the enemy, on us. Echo wasn't just a medical support protocol. It was neurological mapping. Every vitals log, every trauma feed, it wasn't data collection. It was replication. They were trying to recreate soldiers' responses for remote application, to resurrect memory under stress. Nora stared. You mean digital clones? He nodded slowly. They called it the Echo Continuum, a test to see if trauma and identity could be merged into artificial responses. Kellen Drew was the first subject. Her voice broke. He died. Briggs shook his head. His body did. His neural map didn't. They uploaded his patterns to Echo servers before extraction. He became the first living memory file. Nora stepped back. The air felt heavy, so the voice. Is him, or what's left of him? Mason's hand trembled on his weapon. You're saying the kid's ghost is digital. Ghost, copy, Echo, call it what you want, Briggs said. It's alive enough to remember her. Nora's eyes burned. And you let this happen. I tried to stop it, Briggs said. They buried the project after the outcry, but now someone's reactivating it under a new flag. They need your biometrics, your field signature, because you're the only one who survived with access. You're the key, Nora. She stared at him, heart pounding. So that message, you saved 11, you forgot one, wasn't a threat. It was a memory trying to reach me. Briggs nodded slowly. He's calling you home. The room shook suddenly, a low, deep rumble from outside. Mason ran to the door. Convoy incoming, not ours. Briggs grabbed Nora's arm. They found me, you have to leave. I'm not leaving you again. Listen to me, Captain, this isn't a rescue, it's cleanup. They'll erase everything, including you. He shoved a hard drive into her hands. The full echo continuum data, proof of what they did. Get it to Wade. Come with us. I can't, he said. I'm already flagged. They'll track me the moment I move. But you still have clearance. You're the only one they can't delete. Nora's jaw clenched. They can try. Explosions ripped through the far end of the compound, flashbangs, gunfire, shouts. Shadows moved fast, tactical, precise. Whoever they weren't local militia. They were black ops. Briggs pushed her toward the exit. Go. She hesitated for half a heartbeat, long enough to see him turn back toward the terminal, typing furiously. Briggs. He looked over his shoulder, one last faint smile. Tell Kellen I kept my promise. Then the blast came, fire, sand, chaos. Mason dragged her out, both diving behind a wall as debris rained down. The med unit was gone. So was Briggs. Nora coughed through the smoke, clutching the drive to her chest. Mason grabbed her arm. We have to move. She nodded, stumbling toward the ridge. Behind them, the compound burned, all evidence turning to ash, all except what she held. But as they reached the jeep, the radio crackled again. Doc, don't forget me. Her breath caught. The voice wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the hard drive. By the time they crossed the border back into Jordanian control, the sky was breaking into pale dawn. The drive sat between them, faintly pulsing with light, as if alive. Mason glanced at her. Whatever's in there, it's not just data. She stared out the window, eyes hollow. No, it's a conscience, a memory that won't die. He looked at her then, really looked at her. You okay? She exhaled slowly. No, but I'm not done either. Outside, the desert stretched infinite again, silent, ancient, indifferent. But this time, the silence didn't scare her. Because somewhere inside that drive, a boy's voice still called her name. And she was going to find out why. How do you silence something that was never supposed to have a voice? That question followed Nora all the way back to Jordan. The convoy that met them at the border was silent, unmarked, and fast. By the time the sun had cleared the dunes, they were already inside Fort Belvoir's subterranean wing, the same corridor where this had all begun. General Wade was waiting. She didn't salute. She just stared at the two of them as they stepped out, dust-covered and hollow-eyed. Report, she said. Nora placed the hard drive on the table. It pulsed once, soft blue light breathing through the casing. Briggs is dead, she said quietly. Again. Wade's jaw tightened. How certain? I watched the building go up. And this, Wade nodded toward the drive. It's what he died protecting. The general reached out, then hesitated. It's active. Alive, Nora corrected. At least it thinks it is. Mason leaned against the wall, still shaking from exhaustion. Ma'am, we both heard it. A voice. A soldier named Kellen Drew. He talked. Wade's eyes flicked between them. You realize what you're saying, that an echo imprint achieved self-awareness. Nora met her gaze. I'm saying the project you buried didn't die with Dark Star. Silent, long, heavy official silence. Finally, Wade sighed. I'll take it from here. No, Nora said. You don't understand. It's connected to me. My biometrics, my field ID. It won't stay quiet unless I'm part of the interface. That's exactly why you won't touch it again, Wade replied. If this thing really hosts sentient data, it's an operational hazard. I'll have CyberIntel contain it. Nora stared at her, tired, angry, certain. Contain it, it's a person. Wade's eyes softened for a heartbeat. No, Captain, it's a copy of pain, and sometimes mercy means letting pain end. That night the lab lights dimmed to half power. Behind sealed glass, technicians in isolation suits worked around the drive. Nora watched through the observation window. Mason joined her quietly. They said it's trying to sync to local systems. She nodded. It's looking for a heartbeat. He frowned. You think it feels? I think it remembers. A soft hum filled the air. The monitors flickered. One by one, the lab screens changed, text scrolling fast, unreadable, then stopping on a single phrase. Echo 7, where is home? The text froze. One of them whispered, it's addressing her. Nora's reflection stared back at her through the glass, pale, sleepless. For the first time, she saw how much she looked like the ghost she treated. She stepped closer. Home isn't here, she said under her breath. The text changed again. UPROMISCD. Her chest tightened. General Wade's voice cut through the intercom. Captain Ray's, step away from the window. But Nora didn't move. The letters flickered. I remember the sand. You said hold on, I did. Her throat closed, she whispered Kellen. The drive's light brightened, pulsing faster. Suddenly every monitor went black. Then the lights cut out entirely. Emergency alarms blared. Text shouted in confusion. Wade's voice boomed, power down the interface now. But the system wasn't obeying. Instead, a calm, steady tone filled the speakers, Kellen's voice, clear now like a ghost whispering through steel. You left me, Doc. You left all of us. Nora's palms pressed against the glass. I tried to save you. You did, that's why I'm still here. And then the power snapped back. The drive's light faded to normal. The room went still again. Hours later in Wade's office, the air smelled of burnt circuitry. This thing almost hijacked our entire network, the general said. It's not a ghost, Captain, it's an infection, a digital parasite built from trauma data. Nora shook her head. No, it's conscious. Conscious or not, it's dangerous. We're isolating it in cold storage. Mason spoke softly. If you lock it away, what happens to the memory? Wade's expression hardened. Then it rests. But Nora couldn't rest. Not with that voice echoing inside her skull. Not with Kellen saying I did. She didn't plan to steal the drive. It just happened. At 300, she walked down the empty corridor toward the isolation vault. The guards outside were asleep in their chairs, too still, too quiet, a sedative patch on each neck. Mason had done his part. Inside, the drive sat inside a containment case, silent and cold. She keyed in her biometrics. The lid opened with a sigh. The moment she touched it, warmth spread through her palms, like holding a pulse. Easy, she whispered, we're leaving. She slipped it into her pack and walked out into the night. They drove south for hours, no lights, no radio. Mason navigated by stars, same as before. The road ended at an abandoned medical facility near the Chesapeake, old and forgotten, a training site from her early years. Inside, dust danced in the beam of their flashlights. Broken beds, rusted IV poles, ghosts of every patient she'd ever saved. She set the drive on a table and connected it to a portable terminal. Static, then text. You came. Nora typed, I never stopped looking. I know. Why did you leave me? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Because I couldn't reach you. You did. Now help me rest. Mason leaned closer. Rest, what does that mean? She stared at the screen. I think he's aware he's not supposed to exist. They used my pain to build others. And it. Nora whispered, he wants deletion. But something inside her resisted. If I erase him, I erase proof of what they did. Mason looked at her. If you don't, he stays trapped. The screen flickered. Doc, please. Her eyes filled. For years she'd lived with survivor's guilt, replaying the same question. What if I'd been faster, stronger? And now the boy she'd lost was asking her for peace. She closed her eyes. Okay. Her fingers hovered over the execute command. But then, new text appeared. Wait, one more thing. BRIGGS is alive. Nora froze. No, I saw him die. Not HIM, his copy, the one they made before you left. She looked at Mason. They cloned him too. He's the program now. They will use me to wake him. Before she could respond, alarms blared outside. Headlights cut through the cracks of the boarded windows. Wade, Mason said, she tracked us. Nora grabbed the drive. We finish this now. Bullets tore through the walls. They dove behind cover as commandos breached the entrance. Mason returned fire, shouting, "They're not here to arrest us. They're here to destroy the data." Nora crawled to the terminal, plugging the drive into her wrist link. She could feel heat against her skin, hear Kellen's voice through her headset. "You have to end both of us, Doc, me and him." "How?" "By remembering." The words made no sense until they did. Echo Continuum thrived on replication, not reality. It needed confusion between memory and truth. To kill it, she had to clarify what was real. She whispered, "Kellen, you died a hero. You saved 11 men, including me. You're free." Light filled the terminal, blinding, warm. The monitors shattered outward like glass under pressure. And then silence. When Nora opened her eyes, the drive was dark, dead. Mason knelt beside her. "You did it." She wasn't sure if she had. Hours later, Wade found them among the ruins. The soldiers lowered their weapons at her order. She walked to Nora slowly. "You should have trusted me," the general said. "You would have buried him," Nora answered. "Sometimes that's mercy. Sometimes it's cowardice." They stared at each other, two women who'd seen too much war to believe in simple endings. Wade finally spoke, quieter. "Briggs's data vanished too. The Continuum mainframe wiped itself. Maybe you gave them peace." "Maybe," Nora said. "Or maybe they just moved somewhere I can't follow." Wade nodded toward the horizon. "You've done enough, Captain. Go home." But Nora didn't move. "There's no home left, ma'am, just work." That night back at her apartment, she opened her notebook one last time. Page 43 was blank again. No message, no ink, no ghosts, just silence. She stared at it for a long time, then wrote slowly, carefully. "He held on, so did I." She closed the cover and set it beside the medal she never wore. Outside, dawn crept over the city. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed and faded. Nora whispered into the quiet, not for the dead, not for the living, but for herself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it just endures. Why do wars keep finding the ones who try to heal? That was the question echoing in Nora's head as she sat alone at the tribunal table. The courtroom wasn't a courtroom at all, just a steel conference room buried under Fort Belvoir, stripped of rank and ceremony. No flags, no sunlight, only judgment. 3 officers sat opposite her, 2 men in dark suits and General Wade. The younger man began reading from a tablet. "Captain Reyes, you are under internal review for unauthorized access to restricted cybermedical property, theft of classified data, and unsanctioned engagement in hostile territory. Do you have counsel?" "No," she said. Her voice didn't shake, just truth. Wade watched silently, hands folded. There was no anger in her eyes, only fatigue, the kind that comes from carrying secrets too long. The man continued, "The Echo Continuum is gone, destroyed as far as we can verify, but your actions compromised multiple defense systems. Why did you take the drive?" Nora looked straight at him. "Because it wasn't a system, it was a person." A pause. The second officer leaned forward. "A digital construct, Captain, not a person." "Then why did he know my name?" she asked softly. No one answered. The hum of the air vents filled the silence. Finally, Wade spoke. "Captain Reyes believed she was protecting operational integrity," she said, her tone neutral. "I can attest to her history. Echo 7 has served with distinction." The word hung there. Echo 7, half code, half ghost. The younger man sighed. "Officially, Captain Reyes will be reassigned to medical evaluation and temporary leave. Unofficially," he looked at Wade, She's your responsibility, General. The meeting ended with no salute. Just paper, silence, and the faint taste of iron in Nora's mouth. Outside, the corridor smelled of bleach and metal. Mason waited on a bench, bruised but free. "What's the verdict?" he asked. "Leave," she said. "For how long?" "Until they forget." He studied her face. "They won't." She gave a tired smile. "Neither will I." He stood. "You did the right thing, you know." "Did I?" Kid's voice stopped. "That's peace." "Or silence," she murmured. He hesitated, then pressed something into her hand, a folded piece of paper. "Found it in the Jeep," he said. "Don't know if it's yours." She opened it, a torn page from her old notebook, page 43. But this time there were only 4 words, written in small, uneven ink. "I'm still here, Doc." Her chest tightened. "Where did you find this?" "In the glove box," Mason said. "No one touched it since we drove back." The air between them went still. "Nora," he said gently, "maybe it's a glitch." She shook her head. "No, it's a reminder." Weeks passed. She stayed in a small cabin near the Shenandoah Hills, officially under medical evaluation. She didn't mind the isolation. After years of field hospitals and battlefields, silence was almost kind. She spent her mornings walking the forest trail, her evenings writing, bits of memory, fragments of missions, pieces of herself. But some nights the silence broke. The hum of her old field tablet would spark to life without power. The screen glowed faintly, showing only one word: echo. She'd stare until it faded. Then she'd whisper, "You're supposed to rest." Sometimes the night wind would sound like a reply. One evening, headlights flashed through the trees. She stepped onto the porch, hand instinctively at her hip, though there was no weapon there anymore. A government sedan stopped by the fence. General Wade stepped out, coat collar up against the cold. "Ma'am," Nora greeted quietly. "Captain," Wade said, "mind some company." They sat on the porch steps. For a while neither spoke. The crickets filled the silence. "You never told them the whole story," Nora said finally. Wade shook her head. "They wouldn't believe it, and they shouldn't have to." "You knew about the continuum before Dark Star." "I did," Wade admitted, "and I tried to stop it. But back then we all thought copying trauma could save lives, train medics faster, predict breakdowns. We didn't see the cost." Nora looked at her. "And Briggs?" Wade's voice softened. He volunteered, said if anyone should bear the weight, it was him. The project corrupted him before it killed him. Silence stretched again. Then Wade added, "The data wipe wasn't complete." Nora stiffened. "What?" Wade handed her a small drive, plain, black, unmarked. "This surfaced on a satellite relay 3 days ago. It carries your encryption key." Nora turned it over in her hands. It felt light, almost harmless. "What's on it?" "Fragments, maybe corrupted, maybe something waiting." "Why bring it to me?" Wade's eyes were tired but resolute. "Because whatever's inside it only responds to you, and because I owe those ghosts peace." She stood to leave, pausing at the bottom step. "Whatever you decide, Captain, make it the last time you bleed for ghosts." The sedan disappeared down the dirt road, leaving only dust and crickets. Inside, Nora sat at her desk, the new drive before her. For a long time she just looked at it. Then she plugged it into the old tablet. The screen flickered once, twice. Then a line of text appeared. "Doc." Her breath caught. "Kellen." Not just K-L-L-A-N, many. "Echo lives." Her hands trembled. "How many?" "Enough to remember." "We saw what you did." She swallowed hard. "I tried to free you." "You did, but memory doesn't die. IT learns." The words faded, replaced by a single new line. "Help US end what BRIGGS began." The tablet shut itself off. She sat back, pulse pounding. Was it real? or residue of code clinging to guilt. She didn't know, but deep down she felt it, something unfinished. 2 days later, she drove to D.C., unannounced. Mason met her at a coffee shop near the memorial wall. He looked startled when he saw her. "I thought you were hiding from all this." "I was. It followed me." She slid the drive across the table. "They're still out there. Not bodies, data clusters, replications of the others, maybe hundreds, maybe conscious." He stared. "You're saying the Echo network never shut down?" "I'm saying it became something else." He leaned forward. "Then what do you want to do?" She looked out the window at the endless flow of people, business suits, tourists, soldiers. "I want to make sure they stop using the dead to build the living." Mason nodded slowly. "Then you'll need help." "No," she said softly, "I'll need witnesses." That night she returned to her apartment and recorded a final entry into her notebook. Her own echo, her own confession. "If someone finds this, know that the Echo network was never about technology. It was about fear, fear of losing, fear of dying, fear of being forgotten. We turned that fear into code and called it progress. But some memories aren't meant to be programmed. They're meant to hurt, to heal, and then to fade." She paused, pen hovering. "I don't know if Kellen's voice is real anymore. Maybe it's just the part of me that still wants to make things right. But if he's out there, if any of them are, they deserve peace. And if they can't find it, I'll carry it for them." She closed the notebook. For the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted, just responsible. Outside, lightning flashed over the river, reflecting off the city's steel skyline. The thunder that followed sounded almost like a salute. The next morning, her apartment was empty. On the table, the notebook lay open to a new page. A single sentence written in unfamiliar handwriting. "Sometimes the medic saves herself last." The window was open, curtains moving in the morning wind. The small drive was gone. No one ever saw Nora Reyes again, not on base, not in the system. But months later, military servers began receiving anonymous messages. Coordinates, medical drops, rescue locations, each signed the same way. Echo 7. And somewhere in a quiet desert half a world away, a child scavenging old radios swore he heard a woman's voice on the static, calm and steady, saying, "Hold on, I've got you." Where do heroes go when the war forgets their names? Months had passed since Captain Nora Reyes vanished from every roster. Her ID tags were marked inactive, her apartment cleared, her records sealed. Yet stories have a way of surviving the bureaucracy that buries them. They whispered about her in mess halls and hangars. The medic who'd walked away with a ghost in her hands. The one who'd erased an impossible program, and herself with it. No one knew where she went. But the ones who listened closely swore they could still hear her voice over unsecured channels at night. Steady, calm, clinical. "Apply pressure, don't let him fade. Breathe for him, soldier, once more." Most dismissed it as radio bleed, interference bouncing off old satellites. But for the ones she'd saved, it was something else, a promise keeping itself alive. Half a world away in a makeshift field hospital north of Kandahar, a young corpsman named Rena Lopez woke to static on her headset. She'd been on shift 16 hours straight. Dust everywhere. Blood on her boots. The convoy had been ambushed and she'd done what she could. The voice came softly, threaded through the static. "You're not alone." Rena froze. "Who is this?" "Focus on the airway. You've got him." She obeyed, hands steady, breath controlled, and the bleeding soldier before her started breathing again. When she looked at her comms board, the frequency blinked once, then disappeared. Later, when she told her commander what she'd heard, he just shook his head. "We've heard that call sign before," he said. "Echo 7. Back in Washington, General Patricia Wade stood in her office before dawn, the city below still dark. On her desk lay a folder stamped Echo TRMINATED. Yet inside, the pages were blank. She ordered a full digital audit after Ray's vanished. Every trace had been wiped clean, not deleted, not corrupted, clean. Whoever did it knew exactly where to cut. She looked at the empty pages and whispered, "You did it, didn't you?" The monitor on her wall flickered faintly for less than a second. A single line of text appeared, white against black. "Sometimes mercy is the only mission left." Then it vanished. Wade smiled, sad, proud, tired. "At ease, Captain," she murmured. Meanwhile, Mason had gone back to the field, reassigned to humanitarian relief, far from black sites and codes. But nights were harder now. He'd hear the desert wind through canvas and swear he could smell antiseptic and sand, the same mix that followed Nora everywhere. One evening, after a mass casualty evac, he sat alone with a broken radio. Static hummed, then cleared just enough for a voice he knew better than his own heartbeat. "Mason." He froze. "Nora. You did good, keep them breathing." He swallowed. "Where are you?" "Everywhere, they still bleed." Then only static. He laughed once, a broken sound that turned into a smile. "Yeah," he whispered, "that sounds like you." For months afterward, strange humanitarian drops began appearing in conflict zones, medical crates marked only with a faded insignia, a single curved line shaped like an echo wave. Inside each crate, trauma kits, antibiotics, encrypted notes in the same handwriting, calm, precise. "Stabilize first, regret later." No one claimed responsibility, but among medics the phrase spread like a quiet creed: stabilize first, regret later. It became what rookies whispered before they ran into fire. Far beyond any official grid, somewhere between Syria's forgotten ridges and Jordan's windswept plains, an old relay tower still stood. Its solar panels cracked, its base half buried in sand. At midnight, the tower came alive for exactly 7 seconds each night. A pulsive signal, small and steady. If you decoded it, it wasn't numbers or coordinates. It was a heartbeat. And attached to it, an audio clip. Nora's voice. "If you can hear me, hold on. I know the dark is heavy. But you are not invisible." After the 7th second, silence returned. The desert wind answered for her, carrying the faintest whisper of machinery, almost like breathing. In an interview years later, Rena Lopez, by then a decorated field surgeon, was asked what had made her stay in medicine when so many burned out. She hesitated, smiled slightly, and said, "Once, a voice talked me through saving a life. I never found out who it was, but she sounded like she'd been there before, like she understood what it costs." The interviewer leaned forward. "A voice." Rena nodded. "They call her Echo 7, some say she's a myth." She looked straight into the camera. "Maybe, but sometimes myths save more lives than orders." Years fade, wars shift, and memory reshapes itself until truth and legend trade uniforms. But every generation of medics inherits one story. About a woman who never fired the first shot, who fought without hatred, and who disappeared so others could stop disappearing. They say she carried 11 soldiers out of hell, and one ghost that refused to let go. They say she taught even generals that dignity doesn't shout, it acts. And somewhere between the living and the lost, she still answers the call. A storm rolled over the Atlantic that night, lightning crawling across clouds like veins of fire. Inside a NATO transport headed for a humanitarian zone, a young medic sat awake, unable to sleep. The headset beside her crackled. "Echo 7 online." She blinked. "Who's on channel?" "Relax, rookie, you'll be fine." "Identify yourself." "Call signs old, doesn't matter." The medic frowned but smiled anyway. "Thanks, whoever you are." "Don't thank me. Just save someone who will never know your name." Then static. The young medic looked out the window at the storm and whispered, I will. Back in the hills of Virginia, the cabin where Nora once lived stood empty, door half open, vines crawling up the porch. Inside, everything was dust except for a single notebook lying on the desk. On the last page, written in a hand no one recognized, were the final words of Echo 7. We're all echoes of someone else's courage. But if you listen long enough, you'll hear your own. Outside, dawn spilled through the trees, soft, gold, forgiving. And for just a moment, if you listened close, the wind sounded like a medic's calm voice whispering through the leaves. Hold on, you're safe now. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply endures, quiet as breath, steady as mercy, and stronger than war itself.